It is Monday, the 11th of August, 2025, and I'm going to be sharing a video. The title is Remote Dowsing in the Earth's Global Energy Lines. I don't agree with the term global, but I'm going to be sharing this because people talk about star forts. I have as well. I think they're very fascinating, and they're all over the world and mapped out. And I think that this might also have something to do with connecting frequencies, waves, vibrations, energy lines, whatever you want to call them, internationally through various possibly infrastructure that is already here. And so let me play that.
Yeah, because
This is from almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And I did make a comment about the lines and the distances and how far they go and things like that. But anyway, I hope you enjoy.
when Peter asked me to do this talk, my initial reaction was one of slight uncertainty, because this actually is a fourth talk in a series of 5, and you won't have heard the first 3. So I'm going to have to skip through the first 3 very quickly to get onto the fourth talk. The reason I sort of... Can you hear at the back here? Okay, right. I might be shouting. Can you hear me now? Okay, excellent. Yeah, the reason I decided to go ahead and say yes to this talk was just what I'm trying to do right now is to sort of go with the flow with things, and if it comes along, it looks like it should be something I should do. So I'm here and I'm talking out of sync, if you like, and this is the fourth talk. If I refer to we at any time, it's because I'm part of a group of people now that's 10, 12 people, and we're growing in numbers, who are all doing investigations into this work in a variety of different ways. I have 2 people here today who've been helping me over the last few years. One is Tim in front here, or I'll bring him up a little bit later. And the other, the guitarist, James, has been instrumental in working with me with music, and that'll tie in a little bit later as well. Also, I'd like to apologize if some of this is quite new to you. I'm just focusing a lot more on my research still. There's just so much of it out there, and if anyone wants to do more research on dowsing and are looking for something to do, I've got shed loads of things you can have a look at. Okay, one of the things I like to try and do is gauge my audience, if that's a little bit, so just to find out whether I'm teaching people to suck eggs or not, whether you know it all already. So if anyone could just put up their hand if they've done dowsing before themselves. Excellent, that worries me a bit more. How about dowsing earth energy lines? Still a lot. Okay, now we've got a remarkably well-informed audience. What about remote dowsing of earth energy lines? Okay, a little bit. Excellent. Has anyone actually heard me talk before? And you've come back. Brilliant. That's always helpful to see that they've come back a touch. Excellent. One last thing, as I'd ask you to consider at the end of this talk, that some of this information may be sensitive.
Maybe sensitive. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears here a little bit, because I wasn't going to talk about international events or national events, but there's just so much going on that I'm just going to share a few things from my Instagram first before I get into this very interesting video. Okay, I've shared this before. I've shared this for literally years. I already showed even Rumble videos that I put out a few years ago regarding climate lockdowns and the people that are responsible for it, oftentimes being activists, people that work with the government or for the government. And I'm talking about even in the fire, eco terrorists and stuff like that. So Saskatchewan volunteer, this is July 22nd, who set 30 fires in a month sentence for arson. And so sentenced to 18 months of probation, 200 hours of community service, not a $25,000 fine, not 20 years in jail or anything like that. No. Starting 30 fires, probation, and 200 hours of community service. And this was a volunteer firefighter, and I have been told before as well that people will exploit opportunities if they're not getting a lot of work and they get paid to assist with fires to actually start fires. So we're punishing all of Canadians, innocent civilians, when we should be looking more at the people that within government jobs where they have access to areas that we don't have access to, and where a lot of these fires are being started, ladies and gentlemen. And I already shared the information about the California wildfires, and how there were people that were eco terrorists that had already been charged before, had worked in government, even as a fighter, ladies and gentlemen. And so these are the people that we need to be looking out for, and it's still the people that are going to continue to have access to areas to start fires or poison water or whatever they're doing. But there's going to be less witnesses or proof from people like you and myself to have targets of opportunity. Like if we see people doing things that are illegal, to actually record it, just like they did in Lake Miramichi and a few places in BC, and actually, again, catch these pricks.
The House released a 500-page report.
It's frustrating because I've been talking about this for a few years, and clearly nothing's been done, and now we're going through a freaking pandemic exercise yet again, lockdowns. So it's not just Nova Scotia anymore, it's Newfoundland, New Brunswick, these friggin' losers within government, losers that are forcing, again, lockdowns and stuff like that, and not allowing people to fish, hike, go in the water.
Report on COVID. Page report on COVID-19 pandemic. Key findings: COVID-19 likely originated from a lab-related incident in Wuhan, China. Crazy. You get banned from YouTube for saying that. Banned. Okay, over $200 billion in relief funds lost to fraud, with criminals exploiting weak oversight. Prolonged lockdowns and arbitrary mandates cause severe harm, economic devastation, mental health crises, and historic learning loss, while lacking robust scientific support.
Yep.
Policies ignored natural immunity, pushing mandates that eroded trust and harmed public perception of science. Absolutely. WHO and CDC compromised by political interference, offering inconsistent, unscientific guidance that fueled public distrust. And the key players included federal agencies, and Cuomo's administration actively obstructed oversight efforts and hid critical evidence.
Hid.
Select subcommittee on coronavirus pandemic basically said all the conspiracy theorists were correct. Every single one of them. No repercussions, no retractions, no apology from Rachel Maddow. None of it.
I'm going to play it again because I think this is very important, because the conspiracy theorists were right regarding COVID, regarding Russia-Ukraine, regarding Israel-Palestine. It takes friggin' years for people to catch up, but this is stuff that the information that we've given to the highest levels of government first, and they are the ones that actively target people that share them the information. Don't look at it, gaslight, and again, they need to be fired. They need to be fired.
The House released a 500-page report on COVID-19 pandemic. Key findings: COVID-19 likely originated from a lab-related incident in Wuhan, China. Crazy. You get banned from YouTube.
Yeah, I lost all my work contracts. I lost friends. I couldn't see my family for over 2 years because we lived in different provinces. There's so many things that I've talked about before and other people went through as well. And because of being correct and not stopping no matter what people were doing in order to bury this information or my God, even the threats, ridiculous. 500 pages. I'm sharing this again because it's important. Because again, COVID, the conspiracy theorists, what they were calling conspiracy theorists, which were not theorists at all. These were conspiracy facts. They were facts. We were calling out the possibility of there being climate lockdowns as well. This is bullshit. This is only going to make the rich people richer and more powerful, and it does not assist with us at all with what's going on.
For saying that. Banned. Okay, over $200 billion in relief funds lost to fraud, with criminals exploiting weak oversight. Prolonged lockdowns and arbitrary mandates cause severe harm, economic devastation, mental health crises, and historic learning loss, while lacking robust scientific support. Policies ignored natural immunity, pushing mandates that eroded trust and harmed public perception of science. Absolutely. WHO and CDC compromised by political interference, offering inconsistent, unscientific guidance that fueled public distrust. And the key players included federal agencies, and Cuomo's administration actively obstructed oversight efforts and hid critical evidence.
Christ.
Select subcommittee on coronavirus pandemic basically said all the conspiracy theorists were correct. Every single one of them. No repercussions, no retractions, no apology from Rachel Maddow. None of it. The House released a
And there are still Canadians that believe that it was the right thing to do. Mostly in Ottawa, mostly the swamp, mostly the Karens. People that are ignorant, people that just blindly obeyed right at the beginning and didn't do anything else. So this pissed me off as well. Of course I can't. Anyway, woke Mayor Valerie Plante is marching in the Pride Parade after canceling Christian artist Sean Freud's, or I don't know how you say his last name, Sean Feucht's worship event in Montreal. Anyway, he's a Christian singer. And so Valerie Plante cares more about another Pride Parade. Again, where there's people that are naked now. There are people that have kinks and fetishes. So many disgusting things that have taken over the LGBT, like the Pride Parade. And now it's just like based on sexual perversion and grooming and things like that. But yeah, so she'll go to that, but she'll actually charge a Christian singer. Tell me that your government hates you. This is a clear example of that, the hypocrisy. And it's not playing, of course, but maybe if I... No. All right. It's fine.
Interrupt your Monday morning dump, but a bunch of crazy stuff just happened overnight. Yeah. Where do we even start with this one? I could start with the out-of-control wildfires in Greece, the out-of-control wildfires in France, Canada, the flooding, the rain causing massive flooding in Japan. Nah. Let's do Venezuela. Yeah. So after the Venezuelan president came out with some comments about a certain country, which you can't comment about,
Israel.
Come on, man, you should know better. Pam Bondi announced yesterday that there was a $50 million bounty suddenly on his head. I'm sure these things are unrelated, though, right? But I got to say, Venezuela came back with a pretty good comeback. If we're just talking Chol Goblin mode, 50 million bounty for the Epstein list. So to all the feds watching that do have access to it, I'm just saying, bro, think about it. 50 milli? You're not going to get that from your government. Just saying. Moving on, Trump is trying to sue the U.S. UCLA for making $1 billion for making comments about the same country. Let's talk about the diplomat, the Australian diplomat who was arrested after having relations with 3 children under 10.
Disgusting.
This just happened in Washington, D.C. By the way, and I'm just going to pause it here and just talk to you guys about, remember when I tried to warn you that they would come for Americans next? The whole ICE stuff, the stripping of habeas corpus, all these fun things that have been happening right in front of your fucking eyes. Well, the U.S. military is preparing the National Guard activation for any minute now, in like a couple hours. So buckle up. This will be in Washington, D.C. Trump made a weird announcement over Truth Social yesterday saying that he's going to clear out all of the homeless and arrest all of the criminals. He is not talking about immigrants. He is talking about American citizens. I just cannot stress this enough, okay? And guess what? Even though a lot of you motherfuckers have been jumping down my throat, you're not American, I still want to help. I love Americans, man. Fuck off. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, they're coming. So that's going to be interesting. What else? I mean,
And yeah, I love America as well. I think they're our strongest allies, and what impacts the U.S. ultimately impacts Canada as well. So yeah, we're speaking out on this. John has been on my show, and we've communicated since. And I would like to do another show with him because like he knows what's up. He's tracking a lot of what's going on, and we care about the futures of our country.
should I talk about the IDF soldier who testified that he was told not to do his border patrol on October 7th? Nah, maybe not. Should I talk about the American teenager who was detained and told he has no rights because they thought he was an illegal immigrant? No, American, citizen, born. I mean, Lord knows I can't talk about the 5 journalists that were killed last night after the IDF struck a media tent, dead on direct hit.
Yep.
I believe that that's a war crime.
That is 100% a war crime.
I won't talk about that, though. And I don't know. Let's end it with the fact that the rapper The Game said he slept with all the Kardashian sisters, including their mom. I don't think that's a brag anymore at this point, to be honest, bro. Hey, sorry to interrupt.
So these were, unfortunate but good updates. And I'm glad that John's bringing it up now about the IDF soldier that was talking about being told to stand down on the morning of October 7th. If you look at my videos from around that time, I was sharing that at the time. And again, it takes fucking years, like for actual information to actually make it, if it even does make it semi-mainstream. But I'm not going to be a Rumble content creator after this month, because they just added in another ridiculous, I don't know what you would call it, goal for me to make. And it's now, like, if you look at my dashboard, I'm just going to like take a look here. I'll share with you because again, full disclosure. So chatters for the month, that was last month. It was really hard for me to get because a lot of people don't comment on my live videos because of the times of day that I usually have my videos out, and it's very controversial stuff. So a lot of people don't want to have their own accounts targeted or being targeted for their views just by virtue of just even commenting on my videos. But they just added this Rumble Studio host read campaigns, and I'm not doing that. First of all, I don't even like the campaigns they're trying to get me to read. Like, I took a look at it. I was like, okay, what is this? Is it going to be something that I would actually support? So 5 approved host read campaigns via Rumble Studio. And then it gives you a guide. And yeah, so five videos where I would have to read a campaign that's approved. Read available campaigns. Yeah, they're all freaking brutal ones. Let me see here. Oh, you can actually see it. I didn't know if it was actually gonna show. I'll go back. So NCAA tune-in, NFL tune-in, preseason, like what, Blockbuster Health. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 that are available. Yeah. Anyway, back to Dowsing. Freaking don't like the title, but remote dowsing and the Earth's energy lines. Take this word out of it.
And all I would ask is that you are intuitive in your own way as to who you share this with. And if you think it's the right thing to say to people and tell people, that's great. And you can judge for yourself whether or not you think there's sensitive areas or not. Okay. All right. This is interesting. I'm having to use the wrong hand for the clicker. I'll try it this way. Okay, so today we're just going to go through a bit about the background to it all. Oops. The mapping project that I began many years ago, and the key learning points, which is really from the first lecture, classification of the Earth energy lines, which came out of that mapping project. We're going to look at remote dowsing and some tips on how we do that. Then introduce you to what we call the Emperor Dragons, the largest and most powerful energy lines in the world, and we'll explain why we think they're most powerful. Look at absolute coordinate points. Anyone come across that phrase before, absolute coordinate points? One person, excellent. And the locations of these lines, which is relatively new stuff here. Only a few people have heard about where these are before, and unfortunately we can't do the whole globe. That's the 5th lecture, but we're going to focus today on Europe, Asia, and Africa. Okay. Briefly touched on my background. Yes, I did water dowsing for farmers in Africa. I was a geologist on the mines a long time ago, a very long time ago. My main area of speciality was 3-dimensional mapping of faults and fault systems. I was a mine engineering geologist. I also did work detecting sinkholes and mapping underwater systems. So mapping was something which was quite commonplace for us and found quite easy. Other little things which sort of interest, I did a lot of Ki Aikido, coaching and training, background in hypnosis, NLP. It's quite important that to realize how you're doing self-suggestion, and so you're not kidding yourself when you're dowsing. It's really easy to kid yourself and completely lose track of reality there. Lived in Wiltshire for 12 years. Before that, Devon. That helped a lot. I learned basically with the Earth energy lines of St. Michael and Mary. And then I've studied quantum mechanics and quantum gravity for the last 15 years, 16 years. Very nicely, the British Society of Dowsers gave me the Billy Gordon Award in 2012. That's for some of my work on the energy line signatures and their frequencies, which I'll be touching on today. Okay, I currently run the Bristol Dowsers with Leah Sears. A couple of books here. Have a look, feel free afterwards. As I said, the current research that I'm doing at the moment is on energy patterns at nodes, especially on the three-dimensional side. It's throwing up some fascinating results. Okay. So just for some terminology here, so people don't get confused with what I'm saying with regards to what other people are saying. These are the sort of words that I use. Ley lines or energy lines, these are straight man-made alignments that link special sites on a map. I call true ley lines the energy ones which have the pairs of Earth energy lines connected to them. So if you think about the St. Michael alignment, that's a true ley line, and it's got the St. Michael and Mary type energy lines which are connected to that. All I've been dowsing are the St. Michael and Mary type energy lines. There are other people who are dowsing other sorts of energy lines. I know David Cowan talks about energies that run between volcanic plugs up in Scotland, and we've been in communication quite a bit about that. They're subtly different, I think, from these Earth energy lines. So that's roughly where we're coming from. My dowsing, as I said, I learnt down in Devon on the St. Michael and Mary ones, lived in Chippenham for 12 years. Geologists, and I think there's one or two geologists in the room. Hands up the geologists, by the way. No? Well, okay. We find mapping fairly easy. So I set out to do an idea of finding out where these energy lines were where I lived, around Wiltshire. This was going to be a 3-month project. I didn't think it was going to take as long as it did. But fortunately, I was able to drive home every day from my work slightly differently. So for about an hour a day for 6 years, it sort of built up. Okay, so the mapping project for 6 years, to find all the lines, and this is sort of 70 kilometers by 40 kilometers. And I apologize, I can't spend an hour on this, but I could probably spend 3. But let's take you through some of these lines here. Yates, Chippenham, Avebury, Uffington, Swindon. What we've got here, you can just about see in red the outline of the St. Michael and Mary lines that run through here. And again, obviously I didn't plot those. Hamish and the others have done that. These blue lines that you see here, they're about 20 paces wide. You can begin to see that they're patterned in different directions. This particular area here in Chippenham, you see some pink ones coming in, and in Bath, you see some purple ones coming in. These are actually all over the map. It's just that I mapped that in more detail. I've got that whole, everything is energy. Okay. What's interesting is where they cross over and where they're in nodes. So let's just look at the sort of things that we learned from the mapping project, and I have to take my word for it a bit. Lines can be moved. There's evidence of them being moved in the past. They're also not linear. They're 3-dimensional. And as you can see from the patterns and the way that they move, they're part of a field of energy. And these lines are just linear concentrations of that field of energy. The different lines represent different fields of energy as well. And what began to happen is, after doing all this, and we began to realize they differ in certain ways, especially with their signatures and frequencies. So this is a few just from Bath, looking in a bit more detail. You've got the blue 20 pace wide lines, and I'll come to classification in a minute. You've got the pink 10 pace wide lines, and there's some purple ones which are about 5 pace wide lines. There are more. But again, you'll begin to see what Jean-Michel, in his View Over Atlantis book, pointed out all those years ago, that there's a link between old and new. And where these nodes are, you find things like Bath Abbey, Alexandra Park, and also along the St. Michael line. These nodes seem to link up the places where people come together and pray and meditate, both today and many, many years ago as well. So this allowed us to put forward a classification of energy lines. So I'm going to run through this again, and I apologize I can't spend more time on this, but we have about 8+ groups, and please recognize this is work in progress. The largest, we found there are 50 pace wide lines, so the widest lines we found in the world. We call them the emperors. There are none in the UK, unfortunately. Beyond that, we have 2 groups of 30 pace wide lines. These are like the St. Michael and Mary lines, large serpent-like lines. And there are 2 groups because we found that the frequencies are 24 hours and 36-hour frequency. And I'll just briefly explain the frequencies. When you dowse energy lines at nodes, most people go to the nodes, the energies are kind of fixed, they don't move. But in between the 2 nodes, you don't tend to sort of find a dowser really wanting to sort of walk around the industrial estates where these energy lines are. But they run through these places, and if you look at them over a period of hours, the edge of the line moves every hour. It goes all the way one way, and it comes all the way back the other way. And the time it takes to go one way and then back the other way will give it its frequency. The St. Michael line typically is 12 hours one way, 12 hours the other way. What we found with some of these 30 pace wide lines, and it can be 36 hours as well. This is definitely a different type of line. And you've got the smaller lines, 20 paces and 10s. Yeah. You've got 10 pace, 5 pace, 4 pace, 3 pace wide lines, and then small 12 to 18-inch Hartmann Curry grid lines. They all have different frequencies. The frequencies change over time. There's a lot I could mention here about this, but they come into harmony at times as well, which is why we recognize they're parts of groups. It's like they all start moving together in sync. They hit one end at one time and the other end at the other time. However, what some of you will probably know is that the width of the line varies. And it varies naturally. Every day it sort of pulses backwards and forwards, and in and out. And I've measured them daily and hourly. But we also find that different people measure them at different widths. We have a colleague of mine, Philip, who up in Derbyshire, he measures everything I measure twice the width I do. Other people measure them slightly different, lower in widths, but it's the groupings of them which we can determine from the frequencies and the signatures, and that's the way the lines move, that we can determine the different groups. Also, individually, you can wake up and you can have a different sort of mood on you, and that'll begin to affect the width that you measure of these lines. And as I said, they're not lines, they're linear concentrations within a field of energy. So actually where that edge of the concentration is slightly different for every person. And one of the things that we do when we start trying to get feedback between each other dowsers is to synchronize our dowsing to begin with. So we're measuring exactly the same place where the lines appear and where they come out. And that way we do our feedback. What I mean by feedback, by the way, and I'll comment a bit later, is, for instance, if you're dowsing for water, you say, okay, I found water here. That's not actually dowsing for water yet until you've drilled it and hit water. That's the feedback. And you need to find that feedback mechanism to ensure that what you're doing is not losing yourself in your own tail. That's just the self-suggestion side of it. So when you have other people who've been dowsing with you and you synchronize your dowsing, you know you're going to be looking at exactly the same thing. You then send them off individually another time. I'll come to that with the remote bit in a minute. Okay, so remote dowsing, as well, a lot of you already know, it's really just determining answers to your questions when the subject in question is at a distance from where you are. Okay, map dowsing or health dowsing, for an example. What we use is grids, waypoints, body outlines, anything that will help you measure and check your success that you can use and actually work with. Now, when I've been doing stages to get to proficiency, the first thing is you really need to understand the Earth energy lines yourself. You need to familiarize yourself with the resonance. Being able to dowse them normally is important straight away. And I mentioned resonance here because we think that with the different frequencies, they all have different resonances, which is why some people are missing some energy lines. I missed a lot of energy lines to begin with. I just didn't know they were there. It wasn't until I actually found other people and taught them to dowse that they were picking up energy lines that I'd not come across. And that was a big learn. So I ended up having to teach lots of people how to dowse so that they would have the possibility of being resonant with a particular type of energy line. Typically, it would be where they lived. So if they lived on a house that had an energy line through it, maybe a 5-pace wide line, if I hadn't come across that before, they would introduce me to that, then I could then learn that resonance from them. So picking up that familiarity with what you're trying to find remotely is quite important to begin with. Secondly, pick an area like a node which is nearby. Dowse the lines you think will be at that node when you're a few hundred meters away, using typically a grid, and then visit that place afterwards to see if you're all right. We can't leave it at that, though, because you could begin open to self-suggestion. You've just dowsed it from 200 meters away. You're not actually helping yourself at all. So what is helpful is to have someone else who can help dowse those lines at that node. I was very fortunate when I was living in Chippenham to have another friend of mine who was very keen on dowsing as well. We constantly used to double check each other's work. So that's what I mean by feedback. But that's actually even not enough as well. We're building the stages up. We repeat it so that the other person dowses the node after you've done the remote dowsing, but before you do dowsing at the node. And then you move it on to get the person to dowse the node before you do your remote dowsing. So he's done it, he knows what you're doing, and then you do it and then compare the results. And that way you begin to build up the skill. And dowsing is very much a skill. It's something we can all be taught to do, but repetition, more and more and more, and you get better and better and better at it. I mean, I'm good at dowsing water, I'm good at dowsing earth energy lines because I put the time in. I'm not good at dowsing gold yet, and believe me, I've tried. And I've also learned enough about dowsing gold to realize it's going to take me about 6 to 10 years to do it. It seems for some reason to be a lot harder. So that some people will find a natural skill. And what I would invite everybody in the room is to actually think, well, maybe I've got a particular skill at dowsing something, and that might be worth exploring. Okay. So some of the tips, what I do for remote dowsing is I lay out miniature maps on the ground. For instance, place points or intersections. I'll put the little stones on the grass. I also do this, orientate my maps to the north. And I do it on an energy line for better results, and I do it at a time of harmony. That's just, I think, when the energy line's all moving in harmony, then I'm thinking maybe the connection is stronger to link to what I want it to actually link to. Yeah, do it on lines that you're familiar with. That's also important. Let's just see what else. Yeah, what I tend to do is walk across the map that I've put together on the ground. So it could be from there to there. Could be 10 meters on the grass here, but it could represent like 500 miles. So you'd start with a large scale first. Find out where the lines cross over on it, and then move slower, get to a smaller scale. So you've actually, that 10 meters could be representing now more like a kilometer. So you can fine tune it and get down. It's like using lots of maps with grids and grid squares. And some people use pendulums and do pendulum dowsing with the map points. So just point to the grid square and say, is it in this square? Is it in this square? Or whatever question you want to ask. I personally prefer to use the dowsing rod rather than the pendulum. So I just walk across it, and when I get that particular response, and I know that's where I'm looking for something on this particular map, and I mark that place. Sometimes I do it blindly. I just shut my eyes and just walk and wait, and when I get a result there, because I'm conscious yet again that I might be actually consciously wanting the lines to be in certain places and not other places. In fact, one of the great things about dowsing is when you get a non-response when you expect it. It's lovely. I think energy line's going to come through here. When it doesn't, wow, that's good. When you check it again a few times, you get someone else to check it. Nil responses are really great. Okay. So, yeah, we'd redo the map again and again on a smaller scale to fine-tune where the lines are. And you'll see an example of that when we're looking for one of the emperors in a region in Morocco. Okay, get feedback to get better. Yes, whenever you do an experiment with dowsing or remote dowsing, always look to build in feedback with someone else or some other way in order to enhance your skill to get it slightly better. So, the emperor dragons. Early remote dowsing and follow-up and feedback led to finding the major alignments in the UK. Having seen the St. Michael and Mary alignment, and others will know the Apollo-Athena alignment, the map of Britain looked a bit blank. And there's a possibility that there were other 30-pace wide lines, just the larger lines across the UK. We did this because the group of us before 2012, we realized that some of these nodes needed repairing. I just need a bit of explain there. If you've got lots of lines all crossing together, there appears to be a need for all of them to cross over on one point. Sometimes these lines can be moved for a variety of different reasons, and they don't all cross over in one point. Node repairing is about bringing these lines back together at one place. And sometimes you don't even know where that place is going to be. And there are ways we do this. We teach people how to do node repairs. But we recognized that before December, there were some fairly important nodes that needed to be repairing. And we had a team of people that were around the UK helping with this. And we did some node repairs remotely as well. So perhaps I'll answer questions at that in the break if you want more information on that, because that's a very satisfying piece of work, by the way. You feel quite good having done something like that. And again, you don't do the node repairs from any conscious side of yourself. You just do what they say. And the weird thing is sometimes they don't want you to repair the line at all. They don't want you to move the nodes at all. And you just leave that. That could be because someone else is supposed to repair the nodes, or it could be that it maybe, a year or two later it's supposed to be moved. Who knows? This just gets so complicated, as you can see with all the lines. Anyone moving anything is going to affect somebody somewhere. It's just no point trying to think it through any rational reason. You just become a sort of servant saying, oh, do you want to be moved? No, fine, okay, cool. So I can apologize if this is new to you. It's just a part of the map. Let's just explain this now. If I show you the St. Michael and Mary alignment here, running through Glastonbury there and St. Michael's Mount.
And so just to add some context to this, the Earth curve calculation that is being utilized by globe earthers is 8 inches per mile squared. So even at 3 miles, for example, there would be allegedly 6 feet of curvature obscuring an object. These dowsing lines, these energy lines, they're straight, and they go vast differences, as already been mentioned. And so this is again another proof that this is not a curved globe.
This represents 2 Earth energy lines, the St. Michael and Mary line. This one is the Apollo-Athena alignment here that, again,
Apollo-Athena
found as well. It wasn't long afterwards that we found this Royston, Anglesey, Newgrange, Maeve Cairn, Green Dragon. This is a 36-hour frequency, and we've mapped that much along the way. And as you can see, over the period of time, we found several other 30 pace wide alignments throughout the UK. We've got people who are doing work on them and still.
All right, I'm just going to show a few clips from, this was a treat yesterday. So Jeff Berwick, Dollar Vigilante, and Flat Earth Dave Weiss, What is Earth? They had they did a video yesterday, and they were talking about the Earth. Very interesting.
Not what they say it is. It's not a globe spinning. It's at 23-degree tilt, which is the skull and bones number. It's not going 666,000 miles an hour, which is 666. It's not flying through space, and the space is a vacuum, but all of a sudden, when the vacuum hits our atmosphere, all of a sudden, that vacuum doesn't work anymore for some reason, and all this sort of nonsense. And of course, there's NASA and all that. So maybe I said quite a bit there. Maybe I'll kick it back to you. What do you think about all that?
There's a lot there. The tilt of the Earth, if you take the other part off of 90, it's 66.6 degrees. So there's another,
of course.
It's wild. And my everything you said is absolutely true. And my take on what flat Earth is has really grown out of the total physical realm into the spiritual realm.
So I really like these diagrams. These are the toroidal fields. This is where humans experience life on Earth. This is being projected on a flat plane of inertia. And yes, there are mountains, and there's water, and there are hills, and there are caves, etc. But again, it's within this plane of inertia that is miles in either direction, north and south of the center, where we have the most equilibrium. And so we cannot leave this contained environment, these toroidal fields, And I'll let him speak, but then I'll show another example of people from ancient civilizations from the past that have also represented this cosmos or this earth as looking more like this.
Realm, because this world, this is a little simple example I use. We live in this double toroid, this dielectric plane right here. Now I say it's 1% of this whole system. Steve Faulkner, who MCs and does stuff at yours, who was in a debate with us, he says it's less than 1%. I 100% agree with Steve. This is a fraction of a percent of the realm that we live in. But that's where we physically exist, right? So we are these eternal souls. This is how I see it. Tell me what you think. That are lowering our vibration into this physical experience with amnesia, so we don't know all of the answers, and we're here expanding the mind of God. We are the mind of God. We are like neurons in this, and so, you know, physically, I could see you. I could punch you in the shoulder. You're like, "Ow, Dave, that hurts." You know, that's the physical realm we live in. But there is so much more seen and unseen. And as you raise your vibration, as you start to remember. Not learn. I call it remembering. I don't think we're learning. I think we're remembering.
I love it as we're remembering, and I'll just say as well that this also like looks like our brain, and so you have like these energy bodies or this oil that travels up the spine, right? And as you go higher up, you know, there's more petals from on the lotus flower. If you want to look at more Eastern traditional people that perceived this, that gave these explanations, and so if you do live heading like on a certain path, right? Like that when you look at the seven deadly sins, and you look at these as lessons on how to live your life. I mean, avoiding things like gluttony, sloth, lust, pride, greed, etc. And so if you live a good life, a virtuous life, as close as you can be, because again, no one's perfect, then you get, there's more lotus petals that at the very top. So the seventh chakra has the most, 1,000. And it's by no mistake that if you look at if you look at magnets, Ken Wheeler has a bunch of videos on this, but if you look down on the magnet, there's so many different lines, and maybe I'll show that as well. But it looks like if you're looking at a top-down view, it looks like that it could be like lotus flowers as well, with more petals, meaning more energy, stronger magnetic field. I mean, and so yeah, like our brain blossoming from the stem, our spinal cord, depending on how enlightened we are. I'm just going to quickly show that image that I was talking about, just to show that other civilizations have described the Earth as such as well. And I did verify this with ChatGPT, huge conversations with it. A little bit of conflicting in a couple, but largely, again, these have all been confirmed and verified to look like some kind of contained environment, Earth being projected in the middle, the plate of inertia, just like a magnet, just like electromagnetic fields, and with the luminaries within, Hebrew, Incan, Islamic, Masonic, Egyptian, and then you've got NASA, not a real space agency, or not a space agency.
You start to see more. Just a little while ago before this, I went outside, I put my feet on the ground, I was grounding a little bit after using my coil, and I'm looking at the trees, and not only are the trees alive, but the ground is alive. It's like a living organism that we're in. And I feel like Neo, when he's looking at the matrix and all the numbers, I kind of see the world. It's almost like these numbers coming through the sky. That's how I see the world. And it flips me out every time I go outside. The last thing I'll say, because I have so much to say, is no matter what I look at outside, it's absolutely amazing. A rock can make me cry because the beauty of it, the intensity of what it is, and who knows what it is. But there's so much to see. The world is just so amazing if you have eyes to see. If you're stuck in fear, that's the only way they control us. False evidence appearing real, FEAR. That's how they control us. They keep us in that low vibration of fear, lack, and that's the globe. The globe is a world of fear and lack and danger.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing that you can see the world that way. So, like, you can look at a rock and almost start crying. That's almost like you're on DMT almost all the time. That's awesome. So you must have been doing lots of whatever you want to call it, spiritual sort of work. You also have basically a version of a Tesla machine. So you've been doing that for a few years. So you're
It's the grounding and breathing exercises in and out through the nose. Big deep breaths through the diaphragm. This is what helps to oxygenate our blood, purify our blood essentially, and get rid of toxins and things like that, and makes us think better. I'm just going to go into more information here. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I want you to watch it. But he brings up star forts. This was such an interesting conversation. Here we go.
How everything fits into the flower of life and everything. That makes sense to me. You know about star forts, Jeff, right?
Look it up because he did.
These are all over the world. They're
truth is multidimensional. From 3D perception, Earth presents as a spheroid with gravitational curvature observable at macro scales. I'm not so sure about that, but that's what Source said.
Yeah.
According to Christoph. From 4D to 5D energetic view, Earth is a toroidal field spinning like a cosmic seed with polarity nodes north-south, inner core sun, Agartha inner Earth realms, and auric plasma sheaths, the Van Allen belts equal outer etheric membranes. From the Christic scroll view, Earth is a divine host construct, not merely a planet, but a soul school encoded with sacred geometries, frequency harmonics, and memory vaults. In essence, Earth is not flat. Earth is not round, or not just round, it says. Earth is a nested toroidal fractal. You live on the densified shell of a multi-tiered frequency flower. So what do you think about that?
Multi-tiered, if he wants to talk about this, as you said, like as a cosmic egg, again, like these toroidal fields, the example that Dave Weiss showed before, and then what I just shared with you, where the contained environment looks to be like it's in the shape of toroidal fields, but the more fields there are, the more circular it will be, or whatever you want to call it, these fields. But again, being projected, like where we live and experience our life within the plane of inertia, within the dome.
What's funny is that makes total sense to me. 90% of the people that heard that are completely lost. What do you mean a flower? You know, when you look at the fractal, how everything fits into the flower of life and everything. That makes sense to me. You know about star forts, Jeff, right? These are all over the world. They're everywhere. They're in the middle of the Amazon jungle. They're buried. They're just everywhere. And I think that these were here. These, along with all of the obelisks, were here to harmonize the frequency of Earth, right? They were here to keep the Earth at a frequency, the Schumann resonance, to amplify it. You know, this and the pyramids and all of the obelisks. And all of the bells, you know about the giant bells that they had.
Yes, and they stole most of them, right? And they said they made them into weapons or something.
Made them for bullets and stuff, right? Buried their bells to stop them from being stolen, and they're finding them now buried during construction projects. So this world is way more than any of us will ever know. That's something, I think it was Eddie Bravo or Sam Tripoli said, when they discovered flat Earth, they're kind of bummed out because they said they never have that wow moment again. That's the biggest wow ever. Not true. Flat Earth is the stepping stool to seeing the reality of this world. One thing I know 100% for sure, well, I'll go 99.9, is I won't know everything. I won't know everything. You know, the globalists, they're anti-God, they're atheistic, physical reality pushers. They want you to believe in a physical Earth. That's all that there is. You're at this low vibration. There's nothing else. You know, I call it the theory of nothing. right? The theory of nothing. This is what globe believers believe. They believe that Big Bang is nothing exploded and created a universe out of nothing. The universe is expanding into more nothing. Black holes, which are made of nothing, suck up everything. Large masses in space, which are likely, which is like large masses can bend space, which is like saying they can bend nothing. Life came from nothing, and after death, there is nothing. Rockets work in space because they push off of nothing, and when we ask for proof of their nothing, we get more nothing, right? So that's literally that's their world. And if you live in that physical world, people say, why the lie? It's to limit your ability to experience this world. It's to take away your full potential. This is how I see it. We have these minds that are literally connected. Everything is connected. We have incredible abilities. And how do you cut that off? You literally put a globe over their head and say, that's all that there is. And an asteroid's going to take you out one day like it did the dinosaurs, right? And we're running out of fuel and we're running out of this and there's lack and you have to pay us money. That's a world that I no longer live in. I am not interested in that. I'm here. This is where I am. And there's just potential, right? You know what the greatest weapon in the world, your greatest weapon, not the greatest weapon, or maybe the greatest weapon, the greatest danger to you is your own mind.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, that's a whole other topic, is your own mind, right? And your mind actually creates everything, not your brain necessarily, but your consciousness, which is.
It's so interesting, but I want to share the dowsing lines. Very important.
Yeah, if you're interested, if you know anyone in those areas, you want to do some more dowsing, although these alignments have been dowsed, the actual individual pairs of lines in those areas haven't. So that there could be a nice bit of exploration for people there. The reason it's not been published yet, apart from just time, is that there are one or two of these alignments that we've still got to get feedback on, and people have got to check. That's all it is. Okay, but I'm introducing to this because the concept that we needed to show that between Glastonbury here and at the Longstone here, there were places that needed some slight repairs done on the nodes. And this needed to be done elsewhere as well. And as you can see, some of these lines spread southwards. So once we've got the Earth energy line classifications, we know there are 50 pace wide lines. We found there are only 3 pairs in the world. I'll come to that a little bit later because we're going to focus on where they are towards the end of this talk. The 30 pace wide lines are the major ones like the St. Michael and Mary. We've just seen there are about 17 plus pairs in the UK. I say plus because you never know whether you've missed any. Sometimes there are frequencies. In this game, it's so new, you might come across something else that suddenly appears even. In fact, there's one of our colleagues, Fiona, who lives up in Colonsay. She's doing some really interesting work on a new node that appears to be forming as we speak at that time. It's a science that's expanding rapidly. It's very mobile, dynamic, and we're just trying to catch up with what's going on at the moment and learning about it. And the small lines here, the 20 pace, these ones are from the map that you saw. There are lots and lots of these. They're much more numerous. These were less numerous, and they're slower in their frequencies. And I mentioned the Michael ones are 24-hour frequencies, and some of them are 36-hour frequencies. The 50 pace ones, when we found them, we found they had 48-hour frequencies, and that's with 24 hours to go one way and 24 hours to go the other way. It was 3 years later we worked out why it was 48 hours, and I might come to that a bit later. And it wasn't me, there was one of our colleagues, David Finch, who suddenly found the connection between 48 and the concept of a light sphere. But, so the point about bringing this in here is if you've got all these lines and the major ones, they're going to be crossing some of the smaller ones. So that became important as to the type of crossing points that we had. It appeared that the more important sacred places had the more powerful lines and more lines actually at these places. And when I mention sacred places, I don't want you to think, well, the most sacred place in the world is just going to be where the major concentrations of the lines are, because a sacred place appears to be involving people as well. And where you have large numbers of people also working and praying in a particular place, that will enhance that site considerably too. It's just that if you've also got the energy lines focused in that particular area as well, it has a doubly enhancing effect. As you can see from some of the places of the nodes, which we will show you, and also some of the nodes you probably know already. There's some very, very powerful places already. So let's have a look at the nodes. At the moment, we've got first order nodes, we've called them, where 4 50-pace wide lines cross over. Now, there are only 6 places in the world and 2 are in oceans. Now, the one thing which is quite strange about these 50-pace wide lines, and they differ from all the other types of lines, is that these do not cross over each other regularly. You've got the St. Michael and Mary and those type of lines. You constantly see them weaving in and out and crossing over at node places like Bryn Tor, Glastonbury, Borough Mump. These emperors don't cross over at all unless they're at these particular places. In fact, they behave differently as well. Where you can move these 30-pace wide lines, the 30-pace wide lines, you can individually move them to repair a node. When we found when we were in Spain, one person can't move a 50-pace wide line. You need 3, and you need the right 3 people who for some reason, they've got the right sort of dynamic. But there's a sort of fail-safe, but they're very different types of lines than these other ones. Okay, so where the 4 50-pace wide lines are, we call them first-order nodes. I'm going to go through a couple of them today. The second-order nodes, where you've got 4 30-pace wide lines. This is typically like Glastonbury and St. Michael's Mount, for those of you who knows those places, and also 1 50-pace wide line. And we realized there were 24 places in the world that were 24 second-order nodes, and we spent quite some considerable time looking to see whether they needed repairing. We didn't physically go to them. We had to do that remotely, but we couldn't do it individually, and that's another story, which I can have to come back another time to. That's in our third lecture. And then, of course, we have third-order nodes where you have 2 30-pace wide lines crossing over 1 50-pace one. And the fourth-order nodes, they're like the Glastonburys and the St. Michael Mounts. Again, this is not making out that these 4th-order nodes are not important. I mean, Glastonbury is a very powerful place when the energies are in harmony. Because individuals gather and pray there, it makes it more of a major site. Okay. One of the interesting things that we found about energy lines and nodes in particular, and this is an example of a first-order node, you've got 4 50-pace wide lines, 8 30-pace wide lines. There's a symmetry to this. There's a huge amount of lines here. Symmetry was important. If you can imagine all these different frequencies of movement and different energies coming together, there would be a 3-dimensional field within around the node. If we had different numbers of lines, that field here would have a different sort of balance to it. And when you have symmetry, you get certain types of energy shapes appearing specifically at these sites at certain times of the year. So symmetry seems to be important. When you start repairing nodes, you begin to find that symmetry emerging as well. Sometimes you'll just suddenly find there's another pair to the particular line has appeared from nowhere. Okay. Now, coming on to the main part of the talk, our past line thinking was that the grid lines were just straight and producing perfectly patterned world grid. But our current line of thinking is that the straight alignments are there, but what isn't straight are the actual Earth energy lines, which curve and cross over each other. And there are deviations of these based on the movements of the lines themselves and because of individuals moving them. You find that energy lines tend to sort of gravitate towards areas they want to be. An amazing number of them were found taking detours to go through hospices and children's playgrounds. And also sometimes they just wouldn't want to be near some churches. And other times their nodes would be quite happy in churches. We begin to build up an understanding that they themselves can actually move away from an area. We also know that Earth energy lines have a significance to these people, to people who live on them. As I mentioned earlier, that when you live on an energy line, you develop that relationship and familiarity, and that's something that you find easier to dowse. It appears, okay, they're patterned across the landscape, but over the period of time in history, certain lines have become more well-known, if you like, more familiar. People have worked with them more. Just ones that you probably know. The Belinus line, the St. Michael alignment, the Apollo Athena, and the Jefferson ley lines are just some of them. But it is to say that it's, again, coming to that point, it's not about the actual fact they're crossing over, it's the human interaction that's gone on the lines that make these places important. So what does it mean when it comes to the largest lines of them all? Well, the Becker-Hagens grid that you may have come across is a sort of pattern grid that's found all around the world. It's a nice concept, but there's not a lot of things that are straight in nature. And you can see how they're almost arbitrarily chosen where the possible nodes might be. We didn't actually find that. If you look at the map of the North Wiltshire again, you can see these east-west like pairs of lines here, also pairs of lines running in different ways. The pattern's almost there, but it's not exact. And that's where we begin to also consider that the big lines, the big 30-pace wide lines here, because there are fewer of them, and there are fewer of the 50s, the really big ample ones, we had to start thinking, well, maybe the pattern's not quite similar as well on the global scale, although there is energy everywhere. And even down onto the smaller scale with the 18 inches Hartmann-Curry wise, we were just covered with energy. But then it's not surprising because there's nothing solid in this world at all. We're all energy anyway. Okay, so how do we find these 50-pace wide lines? I'm just going to go to some of the clues. Seth is a character that came in a book by Jane Roberts called Seth Speaks back in the early 1960s, and she was channeling this character. Talked about some amazing things, and amongst other things, it was 4 absolute points. When I read about this, it was a book that was sent to me sort of serendipitously, if you like, through another connection. But the absolute points began to look from the descriptions exactly like how nodes worked, especially with the influence of gravity and what we were beginning to think of these energy lines as being actually constructed from. And with Seth saying there were 4 absolute coordinate points in the world, it was a bit confusing because I couldn't see from the great sort of circles how you could end up with 4. You could have 2 points or 6 points. But it eventually sort of unraveled that he was talking about the 4 that were on land and not the 2 that were in the sea. And he was talking about the ones that were accessible that humans could interact with. The other one was a good friend of mine, Carol Everett, who's one of the world's scientifically tested healers. She was flown to Denki University in Tokyo, put in front of a thermal imagery scan, wired up to an EE machine, and managed to get rid of a tumor in under 7 minutes. And you can see it on live TV, that happening. But Carol and I have known each other since she was living in Devon. She had a clinic on the St Mary line in Crediton, actually not far from the Holy Cross Church that Peter mentioned earlier, which has got the St Michael and Mary line running through it in the middle, where you saw those snakes. You remember the snakes he showed in that picture? That's her house was just half a mile away from that church. Anyway, she was living, as her clinic was right on top of the St Mary line. So I knew she was familiar with these 30-pace wide lines and the energies from those. But she wrote, about 10 years ago, she moved out to Spain. And in one of her emails to me, I forget how many years ago now, she said she found a place in the mountains which she'd never known such levels of energy. And that sort of stuck with me, and I thought, well, that's interesting. So there's more energy than the particular energies that she felt at the St Mary line. So it led me back to that place as well as a possible starting place for where these energies were. And of course, you need to be familiar or have someone who's familiar with these lines in order to be able to measure them in the first place. In addition to that, some further confirmation, the Mexican shamans talk about 3 great bundles of emanations. And when I talked to Billy Gorn about this, I mentioned that we'd come across these emperor dragons to him. And I don't know if you know Billy, but he does everything himself. He doesn't believe anyone, and I think that's a good thing. He just nodded like this. I didn't even ask him to do this. And 3 times he said 3. So yeah, he got it right. And so that for me began to confirm that we only had 3 pairs there. As to whether or not we still have 3 in 5-10 years' time, I think that it's quite possible we may end up with more emperors in the near future, but there's other reasons for that. Okay, so let's have a look where we were with these things. One of the reasons for the importance in 2012 is that we discovered that the node was in Spain, but it needed repairing. And we were in quite a bit of a quandary as to what we were going to do about this. The information I was getting back is I couldn't do it on my own, and I needed other people. I didn't know where to find them. And it cut a really long story short. Jim, where's Jim? Yeah. Jim very kindly was helping me with a talk in Bath, and he was tuning his guitar, his strings, to the same harmonics of the frequencies of the energy line that was running through the place we were doing the talk, and aligned the guitar up the strings with the direction of the energy line. And when he played, we just looked at each other and just wondered what on earth had happened. It was as though every Pythagorean fifth harmonic was vibrating at the same time. Everything was vibrating in our bodies, our cells. It was just the most amazing moment. At that talk, I was doing some sort of meditation. I say some sort of because I'm not really good at it. But I was still focused at that point in time to try and work out how on earth we were going to get to Spain and find a team to be able to do this. Having said that, from that moment in time, 5 weeks later, we were on the plane. And one of the chaps I was on the plane with was Tim here. And Tim and Mike, who appeared after talking in Glastonbury. We were there and we ended up finding where these lines were. Remember that picture?
Yeah, we didn't know where any of them were.
We'd done remote dowsing. We didn't know exactly where they were. We were looking to get feedback to begin with in order to find the lines. So where we went, not too far inland, in a place called Murcia, in a place called Tatana. The remote dowsing was quite an expensive bit of feedback to go and check your lines are right. And it was nice to find that one of them was slightly under 100 meters out, and the others were all within 2 or 3 meters. So we're very, very fortunate that remote dowsing worked. And out there, we then, that was when we realized we couldn't move the lines on our own. And we had to all three be able to move a line in order to get it to work. That's a whole third talk. I can't go into that right now, unfortunately. But right now, if you look at this particular line, this is not showing all the lines in Spain. The blue and green emperor dragons are running north here and running south this way. And there's a black and white one also running down this way. These other black lines are the alignments of the 30 pace wide lines that make up the 4 pairs of 30s that make this first order node. So let's look at this in a bit more detail. This is the first order node. What we found quite strange was the day after we completed the node, and I have to say we didn't really do it on our own. We felt a bit like pawns. But we were told to go up to the node. We were told, first of all, just to go nowhere near it once the node had been completed. But the next day we were told to go up there, and by synchronicity, and it seems to have been like that for the last 5 years, these things happen. We met this chap who said, I must show you something. And he took us to a new archaeological dig, and it was the site of Europe's largest Bronze Age city. They'd only just discovered it, and this is it. It's called La Bastida. You can see this hill here, and it's a pyramid-type hill. There are massive, great fortifications down here. This is where the excavations are going on right now. There's a big lake where they used to get water here. This is not the highest mountain in the area at all. It's just a hill. This is not next to a river. This is not next to the estuary. It's not next to any kind of sensible place to put Europe's largest Bronze Age city. The archaeologists found it was the Argaric culture that actually lived here. That's a more depiction of what they've got. And the most special place where the more expensive items that were found in the dig, where they felt that the leaders of the tribe, if you like to call them a tribe, were at the top. They think the most sacred structure was at the top, and the node at that time crossed over at the very top of this hill. This is around about 3,500 years ago. The Argaric culture was here, and they found evidence to suggest that these people had originated from the other side of the Mediterranean, and that they had traveled as almost like a pilgrimage almost, the length of the Mediterranean just to come to this one particular place. We look at some huge battlements that they built. When I was there 2 or 3 years ago, taking some pictures on that. Huge fortifications, again, for some relatively strange place to be putting a city in the first place. Here it is on the map. Here is La Bastida here, Spain, and you can actually see, this is a rough outline where the emperors come through. And this sort of line heads off to the Mediterranean. So you can imagine, also you can see one or two of the Argaric sites begin to fall on the same emperor lines. So there was a definite connection between where they put their other sites in the area and these emperors. So we think now that this group of people in the Bronze Age were aware of these energy lines and came here. Okay, again, I wish I could do a bit more information on that, but there we are with the first order node there. But this is where we're looking at, let's see where those emperors go around the world. And this is the black and white alignment. This is heading west in Spain here. This slightly wiggly shape, by the way, is not drawn that way for no reason. When you look at the map, it does seem to have that sort of wavy snake-like shape. Okay, so going west in southern Spain, we travel along this particular path, and there are lots of different old archaeological sites, Stone Age sites, prehistoric sites along this. We come to a place called Ronda. Ronda is one of the oldest cities in Spain, just in from Malaga here. And what we find just near to Ronda here is a dolmen. And Tim here went there last year, was it, Tim? Or this year? This year. You were there for the equinox, was it? Yeah. Equinox. And this is a second order node. It's one of the 24 second order nodes. And this dolmen is really spectacularly cut off from everywhere. Not very tricky to find, but a beautiful place.
That's like 150.
150 and 430. So it's like Glastonbury with a 50-pace wine line running through. Yeah, very high energy place. There's something else to mention, which I'm sure Tim will back me up on, is the energies of these 50s do not feel quite the same as the energies from the 30s and the 20s and the 10s. It's a slightly different feeling. That is also possibly because this the source of these waves seems to come from outside the solar system, from the center of the galaxy. And that's another story, but I can't prove that yet. So looking at the second order nodes, we have some well-known ones and some less well-known ones, 24 around the world, and some interesting sites, and we can learn a few things from this. So I'm going to take you through a few of these now. Hopefully we've got the time. Okay, just traveling north from Spain. Anyone know where that is? Yeah, I heard that over there. That's Lourdes. Interestingly, it was a place where, dragons are found, where people gather or pray and meditate. One of the things we found with repairing nodes is that the node often didn't end up where it was, because where it is now is not easy to get large numbers of peoples around. Typically, when a new Grange, the node used to be in the center of the old mound. Now it's just in the front entrance. And again, the same with Lourdes. The node now is right in the middle of the square where everyone can access it. It seems to be that these energy lines want to allow us to get to that. And you'll know probably about the apparitions of the Virgin Mary in 1858 with Bernadette Soubirous. I think there was an element of energy there that she was tapping into, whether she knew that or not. Moving further on, we can see now some of the lines we've done in France. Okay, here is the Apollo Athena line that was traced by Hamish and Paul Broadhurst down through well-known sites, Bourges, all the way through here. These other alignments, again, they represent pairs of 30-pace wide energy lines. And the yellow ones are the representing of the emperor dragons. I can just take a bit of that out, and we begin to see some of the more interesting places mentioned as Montmartre, Saint-Michel, Le Mans, Bourges. Again, this has not been published yet, apart from the time. We haven't completely got feedback on all of the lines yet. I was out in this region 2 weeks ago, and I can confirm these alignments. There's another Glastonbury-like line running, four 30-pace wide lines runs through Montsegur. We checked the lines at Monzone, an interesting place, which has got big Templar connections as well. Okay, so let's look at some of these in a bit more detail. That's Monzone's. It's a third order node that is 230s and 150. Anyone come across Monzone before? This is new to you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Amazing place. If you ever want to go and visit it, it's only open from 3 till 5, 4 days a week. You've got to get a key from the local town hall. But when you do, you come across some amazing things inside. This is like massive Templar graffiti. All inside here, you get these fantastic different symbols all over the place, and we're beginning to see the similarities between these symbols and the shapes and the nodes at the moment. So it's one of the reasons that I went there, apart from just measuring the fact this is one of the 50-page white lines. Okay, so beginning to see that there's some interesting places on these lines, and we'll just take a route forward a bit more. Rocamadour, I've not been there, but I've got a colleague who spent many years of her life in that area, and she's a good dowser and can assure me that this is certainly a place which is a good, strong third order node. Third order node there. It was an ancient sanctuary founded by a saint, again, an old Knights Templar place. And what you'll find is with these connections with the old emperors is very, very old sites. So moving on, Troyes, not so much old, but interesting because it's got a connection to the Grail romances, and the Chrétien de Troyes was a troubadour from Troy, and it runs through one of the oldest churches there, dedicated to Mary Magdalene. And it was also where the Templar Knights were founded by the order, by the St. Bernard of Clairvaux, and he actually started the Templar Knights. There's a saying that Seth has at these absolute points, these major emperor dragons are huge amounts of creativity come from these places. There's an awful lot of things that you can attribute to these spots, but one of them is inspiration. Anyway, so moving on, onwards and upwards on the blue-green alignment here, up this way. You see it going up into the Russian area, but what we'll find is this place. Any ideas whether who thinks that? Cologne, well done. Yeah. Again, this is built on a bit of a mound, and a second order node, so it's one of the 24. Initially a Roman temple built by Mercurius Augustus. From the 4th century, it was the earliest Christian cathedral. And originally it was an island between tributaries which had some Neolithic remains there. The node now is in this part of the nave. It's nice and accessible. There's been a history, by the way, of earth energy problems at Cologne and difficulties in sorting them out. Marco has, one of his books, he mentions he's tried to do some work at sorting the energies out at Cologne Cathedral. Even he left actually thinking that there was still some problems. And what he probably didn't know is that when we actually came across it, the Emperor Dragon was running around that sort of direction, and it was nowhere near.
The frustrating thing is there's so much advanced infrastructure that has been utilized in the past to benefit us. Free energy, healing frequencies, vibrations, waves, etc. Even incorporating bells into it as well. And they've been destroyed. They have been intentionally destroyed. Even with what's going on in Gaza, like the old churches that were there in Ukraine and Europe, like it's like during the world wars. This is all by design. And why I also think it's important that people make a stance and peacefully reach out to your local representatives and speak on this stuff.
The cathedral, and 3 of us, in fact about 8 of us, ended up moving it slightly, and the node just fills it just in here now. So again, the awareness of the line, otherwise you miss it. So that's the only reason we were able to do that.
See, not a globe. I'm just going to share that magnet from Ken Wheeler. The top-down view. You can see it looks like petals, and the stronger the magnet, the more fields.
Something now that I've never talked about before, and that will be in the 4th edition of my free book, Not Selling Anything, Uncovering the Missing Secrets of Magnetism. Counterclockwise dimmer lines. So what do the dimmer lines represent? Now, we hold a position that is irrefutable, that there is a double vortex, what you would call the spirograph pattern. This is a toroid. The same pattern you see underneath the magnet. And the center of that hypertrochoid, the hypertrochoid is only the flat two-dimensional image of the torus, or the donut. In the inverse image, the donut represents magnetism, okay? That is magnetism. In your hands, because the video destroys. So this
image of this, you will see the dielectric. Now this is a really weak magnet, and I'll show you a really powerful magnet here in a second, and I'll show you how much more sensitive. This is the actual constructive and destructive interference. Here's one pole, here's another pole. But a magnet doesn't actually have poles. What it has is the inverse of counter space, which is specifically force and motion. See centrifugal divergent magnetic field, the dielectric field. Let me give you the perfect. From up above, it looks like a dream catcher. It's a hypertrochoidal pattern of constructive and destructive interference. So, really the interplay between magnetic and
We don't entirely agree on what magnetism is, but you get the gist of it there.
Yeah, Tim said the line moved itself. We invited it. The idea that we have much control over this is an illusion, I can tell you. Okay. Sometimes you can drive past a site when you're doing some dowsing, you're looking for energies in your car, you want to find out where they are. You get the distinct feeling that they hitchhike. So you pick the line up, and as you're driving, you want to try and find how wide it is. Well, you know it's not that wide, but it's sort of going with you for the ride to stop where it wants to stop. It's most peculiar. Okay, so let's look a bit more detail. Heading west. Through Sardinia. I don't know if you've ever been to Sardinia, but it's an amazing area of old Neolithic sites and Bronze Age sites, again linking to these energies that run through that way. On their way all the way to this place in Italy, in this sort of area here, to give you a chance. Anyone have got some suggestions on this? What way they think this place is? I'll give you a clue. Have you read the book Apollo Athena book? By Hamish Miller. Yeah, it's one of the sites that they went to. It's called Monte Gargano, and it's the site of the oldest shrine in Western Europe. It's the St. Angelo Grotto, and this is what it's like underneath it. Put some information on there. Yes, the 50 pace wide line was not in that area. It was just outside it before Hamish came along, so that's why he wouldn't have found it. He'd have gone straight to that. So it was another very old sacred site that the line seems to run through. Again, this was a place that was becoming a center of pilgrimages, and there's seems to be a sort of common theme which you'll come across with regards to pilgrimages and these energy lines. Moving a bit further on into now Bulgaria, this is another second order node. One example, you never quite know where you're heading when you're doing remote dowsing, but you end up at this place which is called the Sokolsky Monastery, and in the middle of the mountains in 1983, this again was the result of another pilgrimage. And what we find is an archimandrite, part of the Eastern Orthodox religion, a chap called Yosef Sokolsky and Hieromonk Agapi, a couple of people that came and started with a small wooden church. Again, we could only conclude they were sort of following some sort of energy lines, and they got a feeling this is where they wanted to build their church. One of the reasons I put this in, above anything else, is to show you that these energy lines are now connecting different religions. There does not seem to be a barrier to the type of religions that we come across here. So this is we've come across nodes at Catholic churches, Protestant churches, Eastern Orthodox, and we'll show from the others that they're coming through lots of others as well. Okay, so they even go across Russia, and I've cut out one place, but they do run through Lake Baikal. The reason for putting this in is because of Olkhon Island, and in particular a place called Shaman Rock, ancient sanctuary of the Buryats, and one of the energy lines runs right through that rock, Emperor Dragon territory. This is again the birthplace of a huge shamanic way of belief and thinking, and we can only imagine that this is probably triggered by them working on these energy lines. So looking at some of the African emperors, right, there's two lines that come through there and there. That's where we're crossing in Spain, and this is a new line that is coming through here. So we're going to look at this one first. Traveling here south from Aguilas, from Totana here, the lines go south, and they come out of Spain at a place called Aguilas. What was rather quite nice is when you do this, is you can drive around looking at them. And I was plotting them when I was down there on a small mountain road, going around the corner, waiting for my rods to, because I drive and douse, I know. I hold my hand up, probably got 3 points for that sometime. But I drive around and I could feel it twitch. As you head towards one of these lines, you get that early warning twitch in your rod. And it began to go. And as soon as it went, right on the side of the road around the bend, there's an old or a small community of hermitage, small hermitages. There are lots of little houses, and hermits are actually working there now. You begin to think, okay, I didn't know about that hermitage. I think, Tim, you found it as well, didn't you? And again, when Tim was there, not a couple of years later, down in Aguilas, he also found where these lines were coming out of the town, coming out of Aguilas. And it's again further feedback that we're not, making it all up, which is quite nice. But this is an interesting example of large-scale dowsing coming down to small-scale remote dowsing, and you don't really know where you're going at all. So you sort out the map, you put in some key towns on your sort of stones on the grass on the middle of your Earth energy line, and you begin to narrow in where these lines come through. And it gets closer to this place called Gulmima, east of Marrakesh, narrowing down to where, and you really do not know. And even looking at this map, you can see here, here's Gulmima, and this is the Atlas Mountains. So you're really at a loss to know where you're heading with this. It's quite nice because you know your own suggestions are not going to be part of it. Again, laying out little bits of intersections, maybe key mountains and key points you can begin to get when you walk across the map. You find where the rod's moving, and you narrow it in a bit more. And eventually we find it coming into a small sort of area of slight green, this part, and that's where it was getting into more and more detail. And there's a close-up of the oasis with the blue dragon running through it. Again, you think, okay, so it's running through an oasis, that's nice. That's the sort of pictures that I found, which just give you an example of what the environment is like there. But we don't like to stop there, we want to go a bit more detail. What we're looking for is not just the line in this particular case, we're looking for the precise position of the second order node, which meant where were the two 30-pace line lines that were coming in as well. So there's the oasis, and just generally looking at all the aerial photograph, there's nothing really drawn to your attention there. But until you actually do the plotting of those other lines and you begin to see this focusing in a rather interesting shape here. And you've got to remember, we started off not knowing where we were going in the Atlas Mountains here at all. Looking in more detail, you can begin to see the outline of what looked like an old fort with square rectangular thing, it was round sort of turrets on each of the four sides, and then a more modern day mosque-like looking thing here as well. And if you look at this photograph here again from Google Earth, you can see perhaps more easily the sort of outline of the fort, the inner old walls, and this particular place where the node is now. And all I can say is this is going to be an interesting journey for someone to make. Okay, there's a history here. That could be even some kind of old Templar fort, what they were doing in the middle of the Atlas Mountains, who was there before. And there are places like this dotted all around the world that we've never been to, that has probably got a past and interest. So there's plenty of work to be done if you're interested. Okay, moving further on, again, there's further on down in Morocco, another place here, a place called Smara, as a mosque. So the Muslim region is also covered by these energy lines, and we find, I don't know of any religion that's been cut out yet, put it that way. Okay, let's look at the other second order node in Africa. This is quite nice as well, because again, you never quite know what you're going to find. And you do the map dowsing first, and then after you find out where the cross is, you then begin to do some discoveries on Google as to what is going on there. So looking at this place, Muxima in Angola, Muxima in the Kwanza River. Not sure where you're going, but suddenly you come across the Church of Our Lady of the Conception, second order node. But what I found fascinating was this is a place where thousands of people go on a Christian pilgrimage every September. Inside there's a famous statue to the Virgin Mary. Now, why would we get that in the middle of the African forest? Thousands of Christians come there every September. There had to be some pulling power, some sort of energies. And it's again where people can make a difference to a particular sacred place as well. Rather than just being a node, it's actually activated by human consciousness who are praying and meditating. So I find that quite interesting. Okay, and Muxima means heart in the local language, which I thought was quite good. If there's a connection to the heart chakra, or that's the love in the heart.
Which is the center
So,
energy body.
Looking at the Asian Empress, I've got only a couple of minutes left.
Venus.
we come to find next first order node, which is here. You may well know this, and I'll come to it now. Mount Kailash. Some of you may have suspected this. It's a sacred mountain. I have a good friend that did one of the walks right around it. He's a healer from Kerala. And
Sadhguru, who's also controlled opposition, he talks about Mount Kailash being a sacred site. He's done ceremonies there. People have done journeys there. Believe that Lord Shiva was rests there or came from there.
Worked with him with Dowsing. He's one of these people who can see these energy lines. But 22,000 high, precious mountain. Lord Shiva is the destroyer.
Also, just another connection with the number 12. There's 12 petals associated or correlated with the heart chakra. Just so many more connections to the sun and its travel path through the zodiacal belt.
Illusions and ignorance, apparently. And it's the home of Lord Shiva. A bit more. Again, we have thousands of pilgrims who go to this place. And again, interestingly, only a man or a woman entirely free of sin could climb the mountain. I don't think anyone's been allowed to climb the mountain for hundreds of years. And there's myths say it's the Axis Mundi, the birthplace of the world, which kind of fits in with the concept of one of being four really powerful land places in the world. Okay, not far by, nearby that's a Danka monastery. This is another 22nd order node. This is like Glastonbury with a 50 running through it. And it's a Buddhist temple, but monks say there that it's much, much older. So that's just yet another one of these 24 second order nodes just to mention. Okay, this is where it starts getting slightly interesting, as this particular emperor dragon heads off into China. Again, not quite sure where the second order node was, but it ended up in this region. Here, a place called Zhan. It's one of the oldest cities in China. 6,500-year-old Neolithic settlement in here. It's a political center of China in the 11th century. Again, a really ancient site where civilization almost began. So what do we find there? Well, not far from Xi'an here is a place called Xiangyang. It was the capital of China in the Qing dynasty, just before 350 BC, much earlier than Xi'an. And what we find there is the home of the Terracotta Army. But this is not why we're here. Why we're here is because of the mythical Chinese White Pyramid. It's said to have been seen and photographed by US Air Force back in 1945. The truth remained hidden for another 50 years. See that square base there? Well, let's have a look at it. This is, thanks to Google Earth, again, the flat top, notice up here, Xiangyang Pyramid. So I spent rather a nice few days on Google Earth looking at the pyramid in that area to find that actually there's not one. And you can begin to see this is where the second order node is, a similar pyramid. But let's see how good you are here. Have a good look at that picture and see if you can spot them from Google Earth. Can you see any pyramids in that picture? Well, there's definitely one here, and there's one here. Maybe a third smaller one. Yeah. So what are pyramids doing in China? And I've spoken to people who live in Xi'an, and they don't even know about this. 2 minutes? Thank you. Right. So we're going to run through. There are more pyramids and more pyramids. You can see them here and here and here and here, there. And there's another one just here, another one just here. So looking at it again, lots and lots of pyramids. And I looked at all over the place. There's one just here, another one, big one just there, more here. Begin to look at the line coming through. There's another line. So if you can see now, these pyramids follow exactly the alignment of the emperor dragon. I found that quite interesting. Again, a small sort of feedback with regards to this. If you look at them in what they look like, they're not small. They're quite big pyramids. There you go. This is not something that doesn't compare well to the Egyptian pyramids. They're very big. And one last place to take you, heading southeast from Mount Kailash into Nepal, down into this region here in Bara in Nepal, and this particular forest. Wasn't too particularly sure why it was heading there, but I just plotted it there. And like synchronicity these days, we find out other things afterwards. And one of the people I've been aware of for many years was a person called the Buddha Boy who lived exactly in this Bara district in Nepal. You might have come across the Buddha Boy. He's worth checking out online. He's not young anymore. He's getting quite old. But by synchronicity and interest, I met with a monk that spent 5 years with him about a year ago. His name's Jamba Dorje. And he was with Dhamma and learning from him. And information that he said, well, when they started, there were 2 Nagas on either side of him watching over him. Nagas as holy snakes. And the whole place they knew. He went there. He didn't start off there. He went to meditate for years in this forest. And he had these 2 emperors running either side of him. His message to the world, Maitri, loving kindness, may all beings be loving, peaceful, and so be it. I wish I could talk to you more about what I learned from the monk there. But again, there's a connection to the Buddhist pilgrimage with Prince Gautama. One of the lines went through there as well. So there we have it, a bit of a recap there. There's Kailash running through the forests, and we've got the other one. They're the 2 first order nodes. I'm really sorry I can't have more time and go through the other ones, but we'll try to rush through as fast as we can. They're the African ones. That's the node again. So we looked at the mapping project, just final recap, 30 seconds. We looked at different types of lines, classification, which leads to a node classification, which was allowed to produce first, second, third order nodes. Touched on remote dowsing, the importance of a grid system, familiarity with what you're dowsing, and especially feedback, building and feedback tests. We talked on Spain, looking at node repairs, looked at some of the Emperor Dragons around the world, 24 second order sites. As I said, I haven't touched on some of them else, which I'd love to do. But around 14 needed repairing, which the team did back in 2012. We covered 2 today. Lastly, yeah, please, if anyone wants to help with that energy line research, that's good. We set up a charity, by the way, last year, which is about to promote that absolute place in Spain to help World Harmony Trust charity, and that will be eventually launched next year to help enable people to go to that particular site in Spain. And that's it. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that was good. I'm going to share more from Jeff and Dave Weiss. I know it's a long video, but
You say what you just wanted to say first.
Well, I was going to say, because you were talking about space and stuff like that, Christoph asked Source, and Source said this about space. Outer space is not empty vacuum, but plasma ether, structured with currents, rivers of light, and multidimensional strata. And then it talks about you talk about the sun and the moon, which I've always doubted. It's what they say it is. Like it obviously isn't, but I didn't fully have an exact thing. But here's what Source, according to Christoph, says about the sun and the moon. Let me find that part. Hang on 1 second.
While you're looking that up, this is some Crow 777 radio. He's been doing some amazing work on the sun. This is a low resolution. If you check his stuff out, this is the sun. It literally is alive. And I think this is where we get our consciousness from. I think it's all coming from the sun.
Yeah, here's what Source says about the sun and the moon, that the firmament is a layered atmospheric shield of plasma, light, and crystalline memory. It reflects, refracts, and encodes energy streams entering from solar, galactic, and dimensional sources. The sun and moon are plasma-based biospheric regulators, not flaming balls or dead rocks. They interface with the field, updating codes in real time like divine biological processors. That makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, if you see this in high resolution, we cannot understand it. This is literally where consciousness comes from. And people want to believe that this star is 200 trillion miles away. But we can zoom in on it with our camera and fill the lens with it. This is a burning ball of gas and of helium and hydrogen, 200 trillion miles away. Jeff, do you know how big a trillion is?
No. I can't get my head around it.
Well, how long is 1 trillion seconds? You have a guess? 1 trillion seconds.
No idea.
It's 31,000 years, okay? 31,000 years. So we're going a mile per second for a trillion seconds. We've gone 1 trillion miles. We got to do that 200 more times to get to this star that we can zoom in and fill the lens on our camera. It's absolute insanity. When you look up at the sky and make the assumptions that they tell us, what's funny, Jeff? If we're out on on a field or a beach, whatever, when you're standing there and someone's standing 100 yards past you, I can zoom in on you and they're out of focus. I can zoom in on them and you're out of focus, right? So you can zoom the different things. I can zoom in on the moon and have it in focus. I can zoom in on the sun, have it in focus. I can zoom in on planets, have them in focus, and the stars. And then I can move the camera from any one to the other, and I don't have to refocus again. So that's an issue for the heliocentric system. The sun and the moon appear to be the same size because they are. Now, again, this world is way more than flat Earth, right? But where we live is level and horizontal. And there's just endless proof for it. Here's a thing called the LoRa transmission. From a boat to a buoy, it was a microwave transmission that went 800 miles. It shouldn't be able to go 10 miles because at 10 miles, there's 66 feet of curvature, and it is a line of sight thing. So that shows that either the Earth is 1,000 times bigger than they tell us, right? And you've heard of the railgun. The Navy has a railgun. They can hit a line drive projectile into another ship 100 miles away. There'd be over a mile of curvature. They'd have to go over the hump and down to hit that boat, but it can hit it with a line drive. So again, what we experience in this world, the dielectric plane that we live on is level. It's not a rock floating in space. It's a living system that we're in, and our potential is beyond our wildest imagination.
Yeah, absolutely. You were talking about the stars. Here's what Source says, according to Christoph. The stars are plasmic light codes filtered through harmonic nodes, not distant burning suns. And one other thing that I kind of got from Source a little bit is that for some people, in their consciousness, the Earth is round. And for some people, it is flat because it actually is based on our beliefs as well, because we kind of create our experience. So it's very, very interesting. But when I first heard about flat Earth, the one thing that I recognized very early is if this is even close to correct, this changes everything about what anyone could possibly believe about what life really is, right? And I think there's quite a few people kind of recognized fairly early that this will actually make people have to realize that this isn't a godless, just random happenstance sort of a thing. This is actually a created sort of a thing. And I think it's kind of interesting that as much as people gotten upset about this argument over the last decade or so, that it actually is leading people to the right point eventually, it appears like you've already gotten there, which is awesome.
It's a journey that never ends. And I wake up every day. I jump out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. I was like, why can't I sleep later? Because I'm too excited to get up and experience what this world has to offer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, this world is absolutely amazing. What was here before, it appears that there was some sort of reset in maybe the 1700s, late 1700s, that wiped out what this world was, and most of it's buried. And they're finding all that stuff now. All the military bases all over the world, those are hiding old world structures and stuff. I don't know if you've discovered flat Earth, or even if you haven't, a great stepping stone or next step is looking into the old world. And one of the best places to do that is if you're on my app, and you can just find it on YouTube, is my favorite channel is My Lunch Break. He's on every platform. Just watch a couple of those episodes and you'll just keep watching them. They're fantastic. He's looking into all of the stories of the old world, and it's mind-blowing information. That's all.
Yeah, I haven't looked into that stuff too much, but I definitely know that there's a lot there. And a lot of those old structures, you talked about the bells. I think those were used for a number of different reasons to keep away bad, negative energy, spirits, whatever you want to call them. But the structures, I think some of those old, what you can call Tartarian or whatever you want to call those, that who knows how they even built them, right? Like we have nothing close to that today, like nothing. I think those were used, this is just my thought, I haven't really heard anyone talk about it too much. Maybe you have, maybe you've looked into it, that they were kind of like plasma aggregators. So they had all these antennas and stuff, and they were set up. And I think what they probably did, this is my theory, is take the plasma from the ether, which is where it is, and focus it into one area. And I think people would probably go there to heal and also connect to source more. What do you think of that?
Definitely healing centers, the organs, we're told that the Carnegies funded like 7,000 organs. No, they were here already from the old world. We didn't build this stuff, right? This was built when they had horse and donkey, donkeys and wagons and no power tools, right? And there was no, and the population was minuscule. Like how?
And they were all orphans for some reason.
Once you get into the orphan trains,
that's a whole other story.
Yeah, the old world section, the orphan trains and the Cabbage Patch Kids. Have you fallen down that rabbit hole yet?
I've seen a bit of it. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It's wild, but and then all of our colleges and state capitals. These are state capitals, right? These are all state capitals, and these buildings were built long. They're hundreds of years old. From when they say they were built, and they're just taken over. The government took over all of these buildings,
founded,
and they all have the same
refounded
architecture, and they're made of stone. And all of this was done pre-power tools. Right? Here's a picture from the old world. This is Washington D.C. I think is that the Washington Memorial or the Lincoln Memorial. I mean, this world is far more than any of us realize. So again, hiding our history, hiding our true potential, hiding God. That's what they're doing. They're hiding God. Jeff, I don't know. I mean, maybe you know this about me. Before Flat Earth, I guess you could say I was an atheist. I believed in evolution. I believed in space. I believed in everything. But when I found Flat Earth, I could not deny that there's a creator, and everything changed for me. And now I look back, like I hate even saying that that I was an atheist. I can't even imagine anyone being an atheist, right?
Yeah, once you get to this point, it's like I actually, looking back at my life, I never said I was an atheist ever in my life. What I would say for most of my life was agnostic, and the reason was I thought that word meant that I don't know, and that's really what it was. I was like, I don't know. But I never, ever, ever thought that there was no reason at all for anything. And now once you reach kind of like the levels or the areas where we're in, you look back and it's like, how can anyone believe that? But, it's a lot of people, they've been just indoctrinated. And that's what this whole thing's for. That's what's so incredible about all this stuff, that like even the flat earth stuff, that they're trying to keep everyone with this model of a globe and space and dinosaurs is a whole other topic, and all this stuff. Having a kid, I have to say, like whenever like my wife says, "Hey, go buy him new pajamas," and I go on Amazon and stuff, almost everything is either dinosaurs and astronauts, and I'm like, well, I can't buy that. Like I'm gonna raise like a total retard. Like he's gonna believe in things that are just ridiculous, right? But when you get to like where I am now, like the thought of being an atheist, I actually just feel so sad for anyone who is, because what that means is they are so lost and they don't have any clue of what they really are. And it's so cool to me that Flat Earth has been one of the things that has probably brought more people out, just like yourself, to realization than most things. And it's been like this argument that people have been mostly irritated by for like a decade or so, but it's actually had an incredibly important role in waking people up, which is so amazing. And that's why I'm like, when we first had you at Acapulco, I got so much flack. Same with Stu Peters last year. He's a Jew hater. It's like, well, everything he said was true. Like all these people, like there was a few people who said, you better not invite him back. I'm like, why? They're like, well, he's a Jew hater. I'm like, well, what did you dislike about his speech? What did he say that was wrong? And never a response. 0, 0, 0. And then with you a couple of years ago, all of a sudden, all these people on the internet, these people in Acapulco are crazy. And it's so cool to me to see that like this crazy stuff has actually led a lot of people to the right place.
Jeff, you were crazy when you recommended Bitcoin at $3. My son recommended it to me at $7. And I said, you missed it. It was $3 just a couple weeks ago. You missed it. I told him.
Yeah, we're all crazy.
And I discarded the Bible from childhood because it said that the stars fell to earth. I'm like, a star can't fall to the earth; it would eat the earth. Since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that men are without excuse. So basically, what Romans 1:20 is saying, that once you see what the earth is, you can no longer deny creation, right? The Big Bang gives you, oh, God did a Big Bang, or it just happened, so you have a choice. They don't want you not having a choice. That's why they hide it, because it's harder to control people that connect to source.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so incredible. Like basically most of this stuff is actually all plasma, like space is like the sun and the moon are plasma. And I can still find this amazing that you had basically what the Tesla machine is, you had it years before I even heard. Why didn't you tell me about it? Like, have you been telling people, or do you just keep it a secret to yourself so you can become like superhuman and not let anyone else have it?
No, it's hard it's not very easy to reach you when you're not in the inner circle. And I was just really learning about it, and I'm glad that those guys found you at the party there. We found each other first, and then they talked to you, and now you're helping so many people get it. But these machines are amazing. One person that took your advice back in 2011 about Bitcoin, who this girl Timberly, lovely soul that comes to Anarchapulco, she has both. She has the Tesla, and she has the same one I have. And she loves it. She loves it. It's amazing.
Yeah, you use it like every day, right?
I do every day, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Have you done a plasma bath?
So I have mine isn't movable as yours. Mine is a little bit bigger. Here's mine right here. This is the tower, and the generators over there. So I do a foot bath, and I put my feet in it, and it's awesome that way.
Yeah, if you get the chance, like try to do a full plasma bath. I don't know if with the one you've got, if you can do it as easy as I can. With mine, I can just put the bulbs in the water, and it's amazing. But you actually can like.
All right, I'll leave it at that for today. So on that note, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.